The merciless twin sons of Helios Prime beat down on Kale Draven's weathered trailer station, the metal skin sizzling in the heat. Sweat rolled down his bare chest as he tightened the final bolt on the water recycler, the only sound besides the ping of cooling steel and the low hum of the air filtration system. Another glorious day in the wasteland, he thought dryly, wiping his brow with a rag already soaked through. This lonely outpost on the edge of the crimson waste wasn't much, but it was his. 15 years in the Terran Defense Force had left him with more scars than friends. When his service ended, he'd traded his pension for this remote station, and for solitude. No more orders, no more blood, no more watching good people die for causes that crumbled under scrutiny. At 38, he still carried the solid, powerful build of a soldier, his short-cropped brown hair and sun-squinted blue eyes giving him a permanent air of guardedness. The nearest settlement lay 300 miles east, across desert that would kill most travelers. Exactly the point. He sipped sparingly from his canteen, the lukewarm water precious in a place where survival meant strict discipline. Life here was a rhythm of maintenance and vigilance. Wake, check systems, patrol the perimeter, repeat. Inside, his prefab station was designed for a small recon team. For one man, it was roomy. Outside, a modest solar array powered his gear, and a UV-shielded garden provided just enough fresh vegetables to stretch his ration packs. As the larger sun began to sink, Kale retreated indoors to escape the evening blaze. He was halfway through cooking a nutrient-heavy but tasteless meal when a faint scratching broke the monotony. He froze, pulse pistol in hand. In 15 months, nothing alive had ever approached his station. The scratching came again, more insistent. Kale moved to the security panel, activating the external camera, and blinked in surprise. A child. Or at least something shaped like one. It stood no higher than his waist, thin and trembling, its limbs long and slender beneath a fine, short coat that wasn't fur at all but smooth skin of a pale lavender hue. Large violet eyes, set under delicately arched brows, locked onto the camera lens. Above them, two elegant, elongated ears tapered to subtle points, like the stylized elves from old Earth myths. The little alien swayed on its feet, gaze fixed with a desperate hunger. Could be a trap, Kale thought grimly. Some predators in this sector used their young as bait. But instinct tugged at him, louder than caution. Against his better judgment, he hit the door release. The hatch slid open, and the child shrank slightly under the sudden light, its pointed ears folding back in submission. Up close, Kale saw the shallow hollows beneath its cheekbones, the faint tremor in its hands.
"You lost, kid?" he asked, knowing the words meant nothing to it. The child made a soft, trilling sound, eyes darting past him toward the food prep area. "Hungry, huh?" Kale sighed. "All right. Come in, but no funny business." The child hesitated, then darted inside with quick, graceful movements despite its weakness. Kale set a protein pack and some vegetables on the floor, crouching back to give space. The child approached with caution, but when it began to eat, it did so with surprising delicacy, long fingers deft and careful. Watching, Kale felt a stirring he hadn't in years, compassion. When the small plate was empty, the alien looked up and made a sound that might have been thanks, then darted to the door. "Hey, wait!" But the child was already scratching at the panel. With a resigned shake of his head, Kale opened it. "Stay safe out there." The lavender-skinned figure paused, looked back with those luminous eyes, then slipped into the gathering dusk. Kale had barely sat back down when the scratching returned. Grumbling, he opened the door again, only to find the child wasn't alone this time. Standing behind it was a taller figure, tall enough to almost match his 6'2" frame. Her skin was the same pale violet, marked with faint, darker streaks along her temples and cheeks. Long, pointed ears swept back from her head like living ornaments, twitching faintly as they caught the evening air. Her eyes, a deep amethyst, studied him with feline stillness. Her lean, athletic body was clothed in a form-fitting suit of soft grays and muted bronze, its texture unfamiliar to him. But it was her presence, graceful, assured, that held him still. The woman spoke, her voice low and melodic, but in a language he couldn't place. She gestured to the child, then touched her chest lightly. "You're welcome, Kale guest." Stepping forward, she closed the distance between them, moving like a predator that had decided not to pounce. Her hand, warm and light against his forearm, made something in him jolt. She spoke again, haltingly, "Thank you." "Feed, son." Kale tapped his own chest. "Kale Draven." She repeated it softly, turning the syllables into something strange and beautiful. Then she purred. Actually purred. Before he could react, she leaned in, brushing her cheek against his neck in a gesture that felt intimate and oddly natural. Kale froze, unsure what to do with the sudden heat in his chest. When she drew back, her eyes held an unmistakable mix of gratitude and something more. "I have a translator," he managed. "Might help." Minutes later, the outdated device bridged their words enough for her to say, "I am Lyra. This is Terran. You saved him when others would have turned him away. Among my people, this creates a life debt that cannot be ignored." Kale shook his head. "Not necessary." "Necessary," she insisted. Her amethyst eyes shone. "You have a good heart, Kale Draven. I will not forget this." And with a final cheek rub, another intimate, alien gesture, Lyra and Terran vanished into the darkening desert, leaving Kale staring after them, his skin still tingling. For 7 days, Kale Draven couldn't shake the memory of the lavender-skinned visitors. The station felt emptier now, the silence sharper. He caught himself glancing at the security feeds more often than necessary, scanning the endless dunes for a flicker of pale violet skin or the twitch of pointed ears. "Get a grip," he muttered on the 7th morning, crouched over a faulty moisture collector. "One strange encounter doesn't mean." The proximity alarm chimed. Kale straightened instantly, heart tightening. The feed showed a lone figure approaching, stumbling across the scorching red sands. Terran. Alone. And clearly frightened. The boy burst inside as soon as Kale opened the hatch, chittering urgently in his native tongue. His hands clutched at Kale's trousers, tugging him toward the desert. "Whoa, slow down. Where's your mother?" Terran's luminous eyes were wide, ears flattened tight against his skull. He mimed something, wrists crossed, then a jerking motion. Kale grabbed the old translator. It sputtered before rendering a halting message, "Mother taken. Bad hunters, cages. Help." A cold knot formed in Kale's stomach. "Slavers?" Terran nodded sharply, relief breaking through his fear now that Kale understood. 2 suns ago. Far Ridge. Big ship. Kale knew the place, 15 miles east, where jagged rock broke the monotony of dunes. His military instincts were already kicking in, calculating distances, assessing terrain. "Who took her?" The translator caught Terran's hissing reply, "Scaleskins, collectors. Take us, pleasure houses." Kale's jaw tightened. Syrixian slavers. Reptilian, ruthless, and illegal in Terran space, but the Crimson Waste was far beyond Terran enforcement. Pulling his combat vest from storage, Kale checked the charge on his pulse rifle. A voice inside warned him to stay out of it. He barely knew Lyra. He had spent years building a life without entanglements. Then he remembered the way she'd looked at him, the trust in her gaze, the soft rasp of her cheek against his neck, and the fact that her son had crossed lethal desert alone to find him. "Damn it," he muttered. "All right, Terran. Show me exactly where." Within 20 minutes, Kale had packed water, rations, med kit, ammunition, and strapped Terran into the passenger seat of his solar speeder. As they tore across the desert, the boy's fear turned to determination. He pointed out landmarks with slender fingers, his ears angling like weather vanes to track the wind. By mid-afternoon, they reached the ridge. Kale parked in deep shadow, concealing the speeder from aerial scans. "We go on foot from here. Stay close. Do exactly as I say." Terran's nod was solemn, his trust complete. They crept through rocky gullies until Kale spotted it, a sleek Seductive vessel in a natural basin. 6 tall reptilians patrolled, their dark green scales catching the sun. Beside the loading ramp, a line of cages shimmered in the heat. In the last one, Lyra. Even at this distance, Kale could see her weakened posture, her ears drooping, but her gaze remained defiant as she snarled at a guard's prodding. Terran's soft cry drew Kale's hand to his shoulder. "We'll get her out. But we need a plan." The Seductians' arrogance would be their weakness. Only one guard stayed outside at night while the others retreated into the ship's cooler interior. "Perfect." Kale explained, he would infiltrate the cargo hold, free Lyra, and get out before they could respond. Terran would stay hidden. "No," the boy said through the translator. "I can help." "No ship systems." Kale hesitated. "You." "My father was engineer," Terran insisted. "Can disable engines, communications." The determination in those violet eyes mirrored Lyra's. Against every protective instinct, Kale relented, on strict conditions. Maintenance hatch under the hull. Comms first, engines second. Hide at first danger sign. As the moons rose, they slipped toward the ship. The lone guard's lazy patrol made it easy to reach the underside. Kale bypassed the hatch lock and helped Terran inside, his small frame vanishing into the ship's guts. 20 minutes, Kale whispered. "Then I come in, ready or not." Circling to the cargo hold, Kale bypassed another panel and slipped inside. The dim air smelled of fear and metal. Lyra's cage was at the far end. She barely stirred as he knelt by the lock. "It's me," he whispered. "We're getting you out." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy with sedation. "Kale," she breathed, the translator echoing her faint voice. The lock gave way. She was lighter than he expected as he slung her gently over his shoulder, her cool lavender skin warm where it pressed against him. The ship's lights flickered, died, then emergency red bathed the hold. Terran had done his part. Kale moved for the hatch, but a hiss froze him. 2 Seductians entered, tongues flicking, scanning the cages. Laying Lyra behind stacked crates, Kale stepped out, rifle leveled. Looking for something? 2 clean shots dropped them before they could react. He retrieved Lyra and pushed into the corridor, the ship now in chaos, doors malfunctioning, climate controls sputtering. Perfect cover. 2 more guards fell before he reached the hatch. Terran was already there, prying at a sparking panel. "Time to go." "I routed coolant," Terran said with a flash of pride. "Engines will burn if they start. Remind me never to underestimate you." They fled into the night, alarms blaring behind them. By the time they reached the speeder, Lyra was stirring. Her violet eyes softened when they found Kale. "You came," she whispered. "Rest. You're safe now." Her fingers tightened on his arm with surprising strength. "My champion." The word struck deep, stirring something Kale hadn't felt in years. As the speeder carried them toward home, he knew life in the desert had just ended, for better or worse. For 3 days after the rescue, the station felt alive in a way Kale Draven hadn't experienced since his military days. Terran moved through the cramped halls with quiet energy, always eager to help fortify defenses or repair sensors. Lyra recovered quickly, the sedation wearing off to reveal the same fluid grace she'd had when she first stood in his doorway. Her lavender skin seemed to catch the desert light differently depending on the hour, shifting from soft rose undertones in the dawn to cool silver at night. And those elongated, pointed ears twitched almost imperceptibly when she listened, a trait Kale found himself watching more than he should. But peace was short-lived. On the fourth night, a sharp alarm cut through the station. Kale's hand was on his pulse rifle before the sound had fully registered. He reached the console in seconds, scanning the perimeter feed. Multiple contacts. West Quadrant. Lyra appeared beside him, all traces of her earlier warmth replaced with a warrior's stillness. Draconians, she said, eyes narrowing at the thermal signatures. Lord Zareth doesn't send scouts, he sends armies. Kale's gut tightened. The screen showed a massive assault carrier hovering above the desert, disgorging combat skiffs. At least 20 soldiers, their scaled forms gleaming in battle armor, advanced in formation. Terran ran in, fear shadowing his face but not his stance. "I can help," he insisted through the translator. "No," Kale and Lyra said in unison. Kale knelt so they were eye level. "We need you in the hidden compartment we set up. If we know you're safe, we can fight harder." Terran hesitated, then gave a slow, solemn nod. Lyra embraced him quickly, murmuring words Kale didn't need translated. The boy vanished into the reinforced storage bay. Kale armed the automated turrets, activating the buried proximity mines. The first wave of Draconians hit the outer perimeter and 3 mines detonated in quick succession, sending bodies flying. But the rest kept coming, disciplined, relentless. "They're well trained," Kale muttered. "Lord Zareth hires only those too dangerous for the military to keep," Lyra replied grimly. The turrets took down several more before concentrated fire disabled them. Kale expected as much, they were meant to buy time. The next line of defense was the electrified plating on the station's outer walls. 2 more attackers convulsed and collapsed before the rest adapted, using insulated grips to breach the east door. "When they come through, we bottleneck them in the utility corridor," Kale said, moving fast. Lyra took position opposite him, the compact energy pistol he'd given her steady in her hands. The breach came with a blinding flash, but their crossfire dropped 4 soldiers before the survivors fell back to regroup. "They weren't expecting resistance like this," Lyra noted. "Humans have a reputation for stubbornness," Kale replied, slamming a fresh cell into his rifle. Their eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting exchange lay the unspoken reason they fought so hard. The second assault came from 3 points at once. Kale triggered the interior gas traps, but the Draconians advanced through the haze with filtration masks. "Fall back," Kale ordered. They retreated to the central living space, now a fortress of overturned furniture and rigged explosives in the ceiling panels. "Kale," Lyra said quietly, even as the sound of boots thundered closer. "If we don't survive this, what happened between us wasn't just attraction. My people bond for life." The weight of her words struck deep, but there was no time for hesitation. "Then we have even more reason to survive," Kale said, voice low but firm. The enemy broke through and Kale detonated the charges, raining debris on them. 3 fell instantly, but the rest pressed forward, their numbers grinding the defenders back inch by inch. An energy blast grazed Kale's shoulder, heat burning through fabric and skin. He gritted his teeth. "I'm fine. Keep firing." They moved as one, covering each other, anticipating each other's moves like veterans who'd fought side by side for years. But even that wasn't enough to stem the tide. Then a new alarm shrieked, not from the defenses, but from the long-range scanner. Kale glanced at the feed. Multiple new contacts, Terran military configuration. Lyra's eyes widened. "Your people." The Draconian advance halted. Their commander barked orders through his comm, his scaled features twisting in frustration. As abruptly as they had come, they began to withdraw. Kale checked the scanner again. 3 Terran cruisers. Full battle group. The comm unit crackled. "Lieutenant Draven, this is Captain Joran Vale of the TDF Relentless. Area secure. Draconians in full retreat. Request permission to deploy a medical team." Kale blinked, stunned. "Permission granted." Captain, how did you find us? That's a long story, Vale replied. Let's just say Lord Zareth put out a bounty on a former Special Forces operative. We intercepted the chatter. Lyra retrieved Terran, who rushed to Kale's side, eyes on the burned shoulder. You're hurt, the boy said softly through the translator. Kale smiled, resting a hand on his head. Nothing that won't heal. As Terran medics swept in, Kale realized the solitude he'd clung to for years was gone, and for the first time, he didn't want it back. 6 months after the siege, Kale Draven stood on the observation deck of his new home, watching the twin suns of Arcadia sink beyond rolling hills covered in silver-blue grass. The air here was cooler, the wind carrying scents of fresh water from the crystal lake below. It was a view so far removed from the parched wastes of Helios Prime that it sometimes felt like a dream. Lyra's presence brushed against him before she spoke. Still can't believe this is ours, she asked, her tone carrying that soft lilt he'd come to recognize as teasing. Kale smirked, taking her lavender hand in his. Not for a second do I regret it. The weeks after the draconian attack had been a blur, debriefings, medical care, and political maneuvering. Captain Joran Vale had offered Kale a reinstatement in the Terran Defense Force, complete with promotion, but Kale had refused without hesitation. I've fought enough battles, he told his former CO, I want to build something worth protecting. That something had become the Arcadia Sanctuary, a Terran-protected refuge for endangered species. What began as a safe haven for Lyra and Terran had grown into a thriving settlement of dozens, other Thalians, crystalline Lemurians, even a few reformed reptilian species who had fled their own oppressive regimes. Lyra's gaze shifted toward the tree line, where a group of children emerged from the forest, laughing. Terran was among them, taller than Kale remembered, his pointed ears twitching with excitement as he demonstrated a tracking technique Kale had taught him. He's becoming a leader, Kale observed. He admires you, Lyra said, eyes warm. As do all our people. The human who defied Lord Zareth to protect strangers. Not strangers anymore. In the months since moving to Arcadia, Kale had learned more about Thalian customs than he'd imagined possible. He now understood the subtle ways ear angles conveyed emotion, the sense they used to mark shared spaces, and the meaning behind different tones of purring. In turn, Lyra had embraced human quirks with enthusiasm, especially earth music and dancing, though her effortless grace made Kale's own movements seem laughable. The new habitat units will be ready next week, Kale said, turning from the view. Just in time for the Nurelian refugees. Lyra's ears flicked thoughtfully. They're notoriously territorial. The council worries about integration. So were humans once, Kale replied. We'll make it work. The sanctuary's success had exceeded every projection, but it hadn't been without challenges. Twice, bounty hunters had tried to infiltrate the settlement, only to be stopped by the defensive grid Kale and Terran engineers had designed. Political pressure had forced Lord Zareth to publicly renounce his claim on the Thalians after the Galactic Council confronted him with evidence of his illegal hunts, a diplomatic blow that elevated humanity's standing as defenders of sentient rights. You're thinking too much again, Lyra murmured, stepping close until her scent filled his senses. Kale brushed a strand of her silver-streaked hair from her face. Just realizing how much has changed. A year ago, I was alone in the desert, convinced I wanted it that way. And now, she prompted, a deep, steady purr building in her chest. Now I know better. Their lips met, the kiss still holding the same spark it had the first time. Lyra's hand slid to the back of his neck, her pointed ears angling forward in contentment. When she broke away, her teeth grazed his skin in that distinctly Thalian gesture that never failed to send a shiver down his spine. Terran will be gone for hours, she murmured, voice dropping low. Kale laughed, sweeping her up into his arms. Have I mentioned how much I love your directness? Only every day. Later, as they lay tangled together in the fading light, Lyra traced the scar on his shoulder. I never thanked you, she whispered. For opening your door. For saving me. Best decision I ever made, Kale said simply. The next morning, a Terran diplomatic shuttle arrived unannounced. Captain Vale stepped out, now Admiral Vale, his formal attire doing little to soften the soldier beneath. The Galactic Council has recognized Arcadia Sanctuary as an autonomous protectorate under Terran jurisdiction, he announced. Full diplomatic status, increased resources. Kale arched a brow. That's fast for the Council. What you've built here is a symbol, Vale said. Humanity standing for the rights of all sentients. The brass wants to ride that goodwill. Kale knew the political game, but he didn't care as long as it meant more safety for the people here. That evening, the sanctuary gathered for their weekly shared meal. Voices in a dozen languages mingled, translators occasionally producing accidental humor. Kale sat with Lyra and Terran, surrounded by the family he'd never expected to have. Across the table, Lyra's eyes met his. There was no need for words. Kale raised his glass in a silent toast, to the twist of fate that had brought a starving alien boy to his door, and to the truth he now knew beyond doubt, sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could change the course of entire lives. If you've been with me through Kale, Lyra, and Terran's journey, you know this wasn't just about blaster fire, daring rescues, and alien deserts. It was about how a hardened man, convinced he was meant to live alone, opened his door one night, and in walked a future he didn't know he'd been waiting for. It's easy, in stories like these, to focus on the battles. The explosions. The enemies. But what stays with me, and hopefully with you, is that it all began with something profoundly simple. Kale didn't see a strategic objective when Terran first appeared at his door. He saw someone hungry. Someone who needed help. And he gave it, without thinking about the risk. From that moment on, every event, whether it was tearing through the desert in a speeder, facing down Lord Zaratha's forces, or building a sanctuary on Arcadia, was shaped by that single choice to help. And that's the point, isn't it? No matter how vast the galaxy, no matter how alien the faces we meet, the decisions that define us often come down to moments like that: open the door, or don't. Extend a hand, or turn away. Kale chose to open the door. And it brought him family, love, purpose, and a place where hundreds now live free from fear. If you've enjoyed this journey, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Like the video if Kale's story made you believe in second chances, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that kindness, small, immediate, uncalculated, can change everything. Because in the end, maybe humanity's greatest weapon isn't firepower or technology. Maybe it's the courage to care.